Okay, I'm going to break this drawing down into steps that are way easier to follow than you might imagine so that you can have a go, create this, and amaze yourself. Okay, so as explained in the intro, I'm going to break this down into steps so that not only you learn about the painting process and techniques, but also about the app that I'm using, PROCREATE. But that isn't to say you couldn't use a different app on a different tablet and still follow along. Having said that, within the app PROCREATE, I'm using the default A4 canvas, which is 297 by 210 millimeters at 300 dpi. I'm also using the default sRGB code, the one that ends in 2.1, for the color profile. In terms of the brushes, I'm only going to be using the default brushes that come free with the app PROCREATE, so you don't need to download anything. I will tell you which brush to use at which point. In terms of the colors, I've already pre-selected a color palette, and each of these colors, if you go to the value section, has what we call a hexadecimal code associated with it, and each of the codes is down in the video description, so you can copy and paste them into this box one at a time and press enter. The color will appear up here, and then you can tap it into a blank color palette for yourself. Or alternatively, next to the codes in the video description is a link that takes you to my Patreon page where you can download the colour file for free to save you some time. And Patreon is also the place that you can support this channel and gain access to exclusive content such as extended versions of most of these tutorials. A big thank you to those people who do support me over at Patreon. It really does make a huge difference, so thank you so much. Another way of supporting the channel that is completely free is to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and even leave a comment. Any support you can give is hugely appreciated, so thank you so much. With all of that said and done, we're going to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to rotate the canvas to the portrait orientation. I'm going to go to my colours. I'm going to use the third colour on the top row. I'm going to drag from the colour circle into the canvas, release it, and it flood fills. I'm then going to create a new layer, layer 2. Go into the second colour on the colour palette. I'm going in with the soft brush with an airbrushing, maybe 80% size, 100% opacity, and then just in the middle, towards the top, do a few taps. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That should do. Just to soften it in, we'll go to the adjustments, the Gaussian blur. We don't really need to do this much, but it just softens it, blurs it in. So we'll go to maybe about 20% and deselect. And then I'm going to go to my layers and create a new layer, layer 3. Back to my brushes. I'm going to use the medium hard brush with an airbrushing. And I'm going to use the third colour on the top row once more. I'm going to put the brush size maybe about 3% size and 100% opacity. And we're just going to have some kind of hills and like a mountain range here at the back. It doesn't really matter how exactly it's arranged at this stage. We need to leave a section at the top. Then we can drag into the bottom area so it flood fills. If there are any little gaps or anomalies left around where we filled it in, you can just go in and fill them in, but it doesn't look too bad. What I'm going to do with the top edge of that layer is I'm going to go to the organic rainforest brush. I'm going to put it really down, 2% size, 100% opacity. And I'm just along that edge, just going to give that top edge a little bit of roughness. So there's a sense that maybe there are trees on the top, just so when we zoom in, we've got a different kind of texture. It doesn't need to be absolutely crisp. Almost all of the shapes that we're going to add to this are going to have trees that line it. I'm going to go to the layer, tap on it, and put on the alpha lock, which means if we go over it with a different color, it'll stop at the boundary and it won't go outside of it. Now what I want to do is slightly sort of transition to the lighter color again, so we're going to reuse the second color on the top row. I'm going to go back to the airbrushing soft brush. We don't want it as big as we had it before. We want it about 20% size, and we don't need it as strong, so about 20% opacity. And then just at the bottom edge here, just create a little bit, a few passes, create a slightly lighter version. So at the top we get slightly darker. Go over it a few times if you need to. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer, layer 4. I'm going to go in with the fourth color on the top row. I'm going to go back in with the airbrushing medium hard brush, 3% size, 100% opacity. In fact, let's go a bit bigger with that. Let's go to 5%. And we can create a second layer. We can play around with this to our heart's content as well. And much of this is probably going to be obscured by other things later on in the picture, in the painting, but we'll just get a sense of it in there to begin with. Just a series of shapes and lumps, and in fact, I feel like that maybe needs to be slightly more central, so I'm actually going to move it. I'm going to go to the transform freeform and I can pinch that in. The beauty of digital is that you can constantly amend it. Nothing's final really. And then in that lower section, well, we'll just whack it up to a bigger size, 10% or more, and then we can really be loose for the bottom section quite easily. I do feel like it's a little bit strange the way it blends in here, and that's something that will happen sometimes. When you add the layers, it makes a different kind of logic to the scene. So I'm going to go back to layer 3, tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Back in with a third colour, and well, let's use the organic rainforest brush once more. 3% size, 100% opacity. I might just have that a little bit higher up. I feel like it makes sense. And then, well, have it blending in here a little bit. Now we did use the lighter colour, which was the second colour. Maybe if I go in with 20% opacity, just slightly skim over that, just to help blend that in a little bit. Otherwise it's going to look a bit odd compared to everything else that we've got going on. You can see it just makes a different kind of sense of what we've got in the background now. Back up to layer 4 and fourth colour once more, and back in with the rainforest brush, just like we did before. 2% size, 100% opacity. And we just want to introduce some of those textures back here on this layer as well. Filling in little gaps if they happen to appear. Imagine distant trees on this edge. This foliage kind of effect is really good from the rainforest brush. The name of it kind of suits what we're actually creating. And just like we did before, we'll tap on the layer and put on the alpha lock. We'll go back to the second colour on the top row. And we'll use the airbrushing soft brush again. 20% size, just like we did before, and 20% strength opacity. We don't want it too high up. Want it more in the lower sections. Something like this. You don't need to overdo it. Zoom out just so we can see it in context, and we're going to create a new layer, layer 5. We're going to go to the fifth colour on the top row. Back in with the medium hard brush with an airbrushing. Back to, what, about 5% size, 100% opacity. And then, well, we've got another section that just juts forward a little bit closer to us. And you can see as it gets closer, we just get a slightly darker tone. Which brings it closer to us, brings it further forward. And again, we can just fill in that bottom section, increase the size of the brush and just bring it further down. Like that. And again, back in with the organic rainforest brush. I think we've still got it set at 2% size, so I don't really need to do anything different. Just go over some of these shapes with this texture just on the edge. Go to our layers, tap on layer 5, put on the alpha lock, back in with the airbrushing soft brush, back in with the second colour on the top row. 20% size, 20% opacity, just like before. Aim lower down. Allow it to creep up only a little bit. We don't want to take away from that top edge. It's okay, I suppose, if it takes a little bit from here, but not too much. And we're still really only about 2/3 of the way, or 1/3 of the way down. We don't want to encroach too far down at this stage. If you feel that you have gone too far, you can always go back to the layer that's offending, transform, freeform, and you can pull it up or down and move it around in the scene so you get the balance just right, so you're happiest. Go to our top layer and create a new layer, layer 6, and we'll go to the 6th colour on the top row. Back in with the medium hard brush with an airbrushing. Let's put it down to 5%, whoops, about 5% size, 100% opacity. And well, this is then starting to just come forwards in a darker tone. And this is going to be an area that really comes down to about the halfway at its lowest point. And this is going to come down perhaps at the lowest part of the slope here to about the middle of the canvas in actual fact. And then slope down. Then we can drag, flood fill, back in with the organic rainforest brush. Just that top edge a little bit, just make it a little less crispy. Now I'm not going to add too much of that other colour, that lighter colour yet. I may go in and affect the overall area, but before I do that I'm going to create some more layers. So layer 7, 7th colour, Back in with the airbrushing medium hard brush, 5% size, 100% opacity again. And then I'm going to have a section that again is darker and juts closer to us. Maybe this can be a really tall thing in our scene. Maybe it's all the way up here. Why not make a really big feature with a slightly closer area? I think I quite like that. We can bring it all the way down. Let's bring it down here. And we can just drag to flood fill. Any gaps, just fill in. So we've not got a huge section of that layer. Before that, showing through, but just enough. Again, back in with the organic rainforest brush. And, well, maybe we should put the size of that up to 3%. It's getting closer, so some of that texture can be a little bit more spaced, and that's okay. Maybe get a little flatter area here, a little plateau, some trees. I'm going to notice individual trees and foliage a little bit more. I'm going to go to our layers and create a new layer, layer 8, and we're going to go to the 8th color. Go back with the airbrushing, medium hard brush, 5% size, 100% opacity, and again, I'm going to have a section. I'm going to bring it a bit lower in front this time, and then it can start to just sort of blend in around here somewhere. Take it across down here, and then we can just drag so it flood fills that bottom area. Getting back in with the organic rainforest brush, same settings as before, so 3% size, which is a little bit more spaced apart. Therefore, we'll notice those textures a little bit more. We're not going to see much of this on this side. It is going to be obscured. Go to our layers, layer 9, go for the 9th color. Now we're going to approach something quite different this time. So we're going to go back to the airbrushing medium hard brush. I'm going to reduce it slightly, 3% size, 100% opacity. And then, well, we're going to see the bottom of this shape. So I'm going to have a little thin section here, coming just a little bit past the halfway point in this direction. And then it's going to start to bank up, a little bit flat as it comes across initially. And then it's going to bank up in an uneven way, something like this. A bigger size, just fill it in like that. Again, back in with the organic rainforest brush. I'm going to put it up slightly again, 4% size. Just create some textures, and we are going to go back in and work this more, but still, we'll just get it in there initially. It's really nice on that top edge. Go to our layers, create a new layer, layer 10, and we're going to go for the 10th color on the top row. And we'll go back to the airbrushing, medium hard brush, maybe about 4% size, 100% opacity. In fact, now let's go down a bit more precise, just like before, 3%. We're going to bring it slightly lower down. And again, we can adjust these, we can tweak these as much as we need to, but we just need to get them in there to begin with. And ever so slight slope downwards, but not much. So it comes down this way. And then we're going to have this as a series of rocks, land that just banks up, gives us some height, but not too much. I think this works nicely if it's higher than this side. Let's turn that down 2%. Let's just build that out. And it doesn't matter if it's scruffy because we're going to go over it with other textures right on that edge anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Might just go in with the organic rainforest brush. Be a bit more control, 3%. Don't want to add too much, just a bit more of that texture in here and around this bit. And as I was saying before, we can always amend these layers. So I'm going to go back to layer 9. Now that everything's in place roughly, I'm going to go to the transform, freeform, squash it a little bit, move it up. I think I prefer it more there. Doesn't matter about this. Back to layer 10, move it up a hint more, tweak it in. We want to leave enough room for a river and also some other features just cutting in here as well. On that basis, I'm going to go back to layer 8 and create a layer above that, layer 11. I'm going to go to these colours down here. I'm going to go to the 3rd colour on the bottom row, and I'm going to go in with the airbrushing, medium hard brush, 5% size, 100% opacity, and I'm just going to introduce what would be, I suppose, the horizon line. It's the top edge of the water of the river. I'm not going to see much of the detail yet, but we'll just fill it in. Let's turn it up 10%, and we can just add it into all of this section. We're going to have other tones and other hues, but it just gives us a sense of it. I'm going to go to the very top, create a new layer, layer 12. I'm going to go to the colors. I'm going to go for the 6th color on the bottom row. I'm going to go in with the medium hard brush with an airbrushing. I'm going to put it down to a sensible size, 5% size, or 100% opacity. And this is really going to cut through everything and really be quite dramatic as a dark tone. So I want this dark color at the bottom edge of the canvas. Just do some stones here. There's one. I don't mind if they collide into each other a little bit. Here's another one. Here's another one. We don't see the definition yet, and at some point these stones are kind of morphing into tree roots. We've not got the tree yet, but we're going to have this coming up, and then at this point it's pretty much a tree trunk. So I'm going to steer our main trunk off, lean it off this way. A little bit of sketching here involved. You can always put the brush size up, 9% maybe. I'll leave a little bit of gap at the top on the left side. Turn it back down, maybe 4%. Have a branch that just cuts off here. Another branch, maybe one that comes over this way, across the canvas. And you can obviously turn this down to an appropriate size, go in there and refine this as much as you feel you want to. And we were using a soft brush, or rather an airbrush, so sometimes when you press lightly you get a bit of a soft fuzzy edge. So if you need to go in, you can just go and tidy up some of those edges. We're going to add so much texture to this, then I'm not too concerned about that at this stage really. But we can have branches that come off from there. Once you've got the main position in, we can go in and we can fine tune, have some other kind of lumps and shapes that kick out from our tree. Let's just zoom out so you can see. And that'll do for one side. That is the closest side, I suppose, but we'll create another layer, layer 13, still with the darkest colour, the 6th colour on the bottom row. Medium hard brush with an airbrushing, 2% size, 100% opacity. And I just want, just like we've got this, coming to a point in the river, and it helps create this sort of zigzagging sense of a river. A little bit that juts in, just like we've got here, some stones, just blobs really at this stage. It really doesn't need to be neat. It's like flattening out at the bottom edge of it, like this. And another one, just keep extending it this way. And then put it up, 4% size maybe, bigger lumps. There's no right and wrong with this. It's more about colour shifts and positioning, where to put things and what colours to use than it is the exact shapes. So don't worry if yours is a bit different. Might end up being even better for it. Down to 2%, I just want to make a bit more of this jutting in, maybe to about halfway. Make a bit of that stone there. Not yet define what everything's going to be, but we can do that shortly. Maybe there could be another set of stones coming in from this side as well. Could be a few layers to this. Start to get that effect, like that. Going to zoom in, and I'm going to do another tree, so let's put this up to a bigger size again. What do we say? About 9% last time, 100% opacity. And the main shape we can have coming in like this. Once you've established the main kind of size and positioning like that, then you can go in, reduce the size of the brush, maybe about 4% initially, have it branching off again. It's useful if you just keep it zoomed out because you can really see the overall impact. Then you can turn it down, maybe 2%. Branches that go off from there. One that's over here. You can always go back and add more branches later, so don't worry too much. As long as we've got the main positioning in, that's what's important. There are some things perhaps that need some adjustment, so I'm going to do that now. So we're going to go back, now that we can see how everything is situated. So I'm going to go to layer 4, tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. Transform, and I can freeform, move it this way a little bit. Perhaps I just want to have this slightly away from the tree edge. I think that a bit more central works better. Deselect. You can do this with any number of the layers. Check it. I think that one's probably fine. Layer 6, that one's probably fine. Layer 7, I might go on that. Freeform. Maybe just bring it this way a little bit. I think that I'm overall a bit happier with. Okay, so I'm going to work through some of these layers now, adding texture to the background. I don't think there's a lot I need to do to layer 3. So we're going to go straight to layer 4, tap on it, put on the alpha lock. We're going to go to the first colour on the middle row, and we're going to go back to the rainforest brush, but tap on it, go to stroke path, put the spacing slider over to 45%, and done. I'm going to put it at 2% size and 100% opacity, and then this colour, as you can see here, is just going to be a note lighter. It's nothing too dramatic, we don't need it to be overly dramatic, but we're just going to introduce a hint of textures back in these areas on this layer. The sun we're going to have coming from kind of central down, and I just want a hint of colours coming through, and we can even go along to the second colour on the middle row. It's not much different, just a hint warmer, but we definitely want some textures and colours coming in here. Third colour, we don't need too much of that for this layer. Just to break it up so it's not too flat. You can see it adds more depth in that background to that detail, which is quite nice, especially along the edge on this side. We've yet to put the sun in, but it will have its impact. Then we're going to go to layer 5, tap on it, put on the alpha lock, in fact it's already still on. So just identify the layer, it's this layer here. We're going to go to the third colour, same brush, and we can go right to the very edge, and it's not going to add it anywhere else. It's impossible to make mistakes in that sense. You can't add it into a layer in front, it's only going to add it to this section here. Let's go along the top edge. Don't want to be over dramatic with it. Going to lose some of the impact if we add too much. Add some of it in the lower parts. In fact, we're going to go backwards a colour. We're going to go back to the second colour. I might just use it to slightly lighten up the edge. Have the two colours sort of impacting together. And then down in these lower sections, you're going to notice this lighter colour a little bit more as well. Already, you're starting to create a sense that we have much more depth, much more going on in that scene. It's not difficult, it's quite an easy effect to build in. It is effective, and then we'll go back to the first colour on the middle row. Down for the lower sections, you'll notice it even more. We'll go to the 6, or layer 6, which is just this little bit down here. Go to the fourth colour. Let's check on layer 6, let's put the alpha lock on. And then we can go in, same settings, so 2% size, 100% opacity. And this is very green, actually, when I now see it. Might be a little bit too much, but we can go in and soften this. We do want the greens to get more vibrant as they get closer to us, but that is very strong. So maybe let's go backwards to the third colour. We're using 2 in conjunction, so we've got that warmth, but we just soften it in slightly with that slightly lighter and less saturated version. And you can see it's bringing the kind of the sun into these rear areas. Now we don't want to do too much. If you feel like you've gone too far, well, it's only a small area, just 2 fingers, undo it, go back in, maybe slightly lower on the 2%. I want to leave some of that dark tone showing through, so I want to make it a bit more subtle actually. Maybe just preference the top. You can see some of that dark colour still remaining. I think it's important. Let's go back up, layer 7, tap on it, put the alpha lock on. Well, let's stay with the third colour, maybe for the edge down here. Again, just peel back further textures, take it up here along that very edge, tap in and along the edge. What other colour was that? The fourth colour, which is a much more vivid green, but the 2 in conjunction can be quite nice. And up here as well, we have a little bit, not much. And again, when you zoom out, you start to get that effect. It actually, although when you zoom in, it doesn't necessarily pull together straight away. So when you zoom out, you start to see it. Back to the third colour. Add some of those really bright bits as well. Could turn it down again. Let's go for the 1% size, in fact, along the edge. Again, it's the combination. Okay, let's go to our layers. Layer 8, identify it. There it is. Tap on it, put the alpha lock on. Let's try the fourth colour. Should at some point start to get more appropriate to have these vivid greens, and I think this is about that point, so let's put it back up. 2% size, 100% opacity. Now it feels more appropriate to have this fourth colour, more of a vivid green now, just on the top edge, and you can afford to be untidy because we've got the alpha lock on. It's not going to add it anywhere else. Just a few little bits. And the sun's coming from up here, so you can imagine it just impacts that edge quite nicely. Up there. Okay, I'm also going to turn off the alpha lock now, and well, there might just be some bits in between those areas that helps just soften them together so they're not an absolute one that stops and then the other begins. There might just be some in-between points, some highlights that kind of help blend it together a little bit. Not too much though. Okay, I'm going to go up. Ignore layer 11, that was the water. Let's go to layer 9. Now this is going to be an altogether different colour palette really. So let's look at our greens. Well, we've got this next green. We've got the 6th colour, layer 9, put on the alpha lock. I'm going to go in with the rainforest brush, maybe top end of 2%, size 100% opacity, and again, like I said, the 6th colour. And we're bringing in some of this really vivid green. And we can allow it to be slightly broken in places too. And once we've got some of that green in, I'm going to go forwards to the 7th colour, still with the rainforest brush, 2% size, 100% opacity. Let's work in some of that more vivid green. That's a little bit higher on that 2%. Build in some of this vibrant green. And really it's just the intensity of green, the warmth, the sunniness that is starting to bring a sense of perspective using colour and tone. Does a lot of the work for us if we let it. Move along, 8th colour, turn it down on that 2%, and we want some of that really vibrant yellow-green to be impacting in here. Here's a little section that's just catching the light here. And hopefully when we zoom out we can start to feel the impact of the sun almost without even adding it in yet. Go up, layer 10. We have some really vibrant colours. I'm not sure we're quite ready for them yet. So let's stay with the 6th colour with the rainforest brush. Put the alpha lock on this layer again. Up on that 2% size. Let's get some of that green in to begin with. We can always really go back in and add more colours and more textures. This is just kind of like a foundational beginning point of the colours really, and then forwards once more. So let's skip that one, let's go straight to the 8th colour. Let's just be bold. We'll turn the size down on that 2%, give it a nice crispy edge. Again, just to bring out that brilliance of the sun. Doesn't really work unless we have that super yellowy colour coming in. Okay, I'm going to go back to layer 8. The alpha lock is on. I'm going to go in with the 1st colour on the middle row, medium hard brush, 2% size, well, about 15% strength, opacity, and what I want is the bit to be trees, but I also want it to be kind of rocks. And a really subtle way of introducing them is just to do some vertical lines, just some streaks. Could be taps and individual blocks too, just to break up the texture, but a combination of streaks that come up, and then gaps are important too. We don't want to add too much of this, it needs to be broken. But generally in an upward kind of way, we can bring in a suggestion of the movement and a kind of height here. So we want the trees on top and then a kind of drop of rock surface. And you can see that effect, it's quite subtle, but it has impacted. I don't feel like I need to do too much of that other layers in the background, but this is the starting point. We're also going to go to the 10th colour on the bottom row. Stay with the medium hard brush, but I'm going to turn it down, low on that 2% size, still at 15% strength. And then just at the bottom here, I can imagine the sun coming in and maybe impacting some of the stone that's down here. And we're just starting to see some of that sunniness. Let's put it up a little bit, maybe about 30%. And it's just impacting on 1 or 2 bits of stone that just encroach into the sun in this area. Quite subtle, but it can make quite a difference. Let's go up, Layer 9, let's move over here, layer 9. The alpha lock is still on. It doesn't really matter, I suppose, but the alpha lock is on. I'm going to stay with the medium hard brush. This time I'm going to try a slightly cooler colour. I'm going to go for the 8th colour on the, the bottom row. 2% size. Let's start subtle, 20% strength. And we've got a slightly cooler area in the shadows here. So we can just start to create a sense of rocks down here. Not quite the same vertical. Slightly more horizontal for these. I've not got the height. Let's just keep it lower. There might also be a little bit more of need of more foliage there, so I'm going to go back in just a little bit with the rainforest brush with an organic, back to the 6th colour, and it's not quite the right colour, but I'm going to put 3% size and about 40% strength and just a bit more foliage in here. I could really feel like it could do with a slightly cooler colour, so I suppose we could try that. We could try mixing it perhaps with maybe the 8th colour on the top row. So I've added some of that as a foundation, then just a bit of this colour mixed in with it as well, just to slightly soften it in the shadow parts, not too much. We can blend that in as well. And then, well, we've got this section that, again, needs some of that sun, so we can go to the 10th colour on the bottom row, and we'll go back to the airbrushing medium hard brush, 1% size, maybe 40% strength, and well, without a great deal of effort, we can just suggest some highlights. The sun is impacting these stones, or these trees, so therefore some of it is likely just to dapple through into any stones that are down here. And you can see the combination of the blue and then this warmer colour. In fact, let's go to the layer, turn off the alpha lock, even further down on that 1%, still at 40% opacity. We can really be neat then, be a bit more precise along the edge if we need to be. Just give it some highlights just for here really. You can see the impact. The sun feels like it's coming through. Up to layer 10, this area. The alpha lock is on, that's fine initially. Let's go in with these colours. Let's go for the 8th colour on the bottom row. Back in with the medium hard brush, 2% size. Let's try a bit bolder, 50% opacity. And let's try some sections we can tap. Create some sections that kind of join together. Maybe we're just getting a little bit more sense of the rock textures at this point. So we get like shapes that join up together with a thin kind of split between them. So we can fill in these blocks to a certain extent now. You might get a thin bit. I'll zoom in just a little bit so you can see there's perhaps gaps left between them. You can always go back in and draw them in if you feel like it's difficult to leave a negative space, a little gap between them. You can always go back in with the darker colour again and actually add them in more positively. That's fine. You can start to appreciate the effect when you zoom out. Take it right to the bottom edge initially, and we'll probably need to go in there with some dark colour just to tidy that up. A few tabs of it further up as it kind of mingles with the foliage, and that works. And then, well, let's go to the layer, tap on it and turn off the alpha lock. And again, we're going to go in some warmer colours. This time we'll try the 9th colour. Still the medium hard brush, 1% size, 50% strength. And well, we've got a slightly warmer hue coming in addition. Let's turn it up a little bit higher on that 1%. Impacting the stones as they're just creeping around into the sun. Back to the 10th colour, just so it doesn't feel too jarring yet. You don't really want anything to jar for that matter. There you go. And that kind of feels a bit more seamless. And that whole back area now feels like it has some believability, feels a bit more grounded. We're going to go forwards to layer 12, which is this one. Tap on it, put on the alpha lock. Go in with the, well, why not the medium hard brush? We'll go to some of these other colours. We've got a range of different colours. We don't really need to have one colour. We could have a few options. Let's go for maybe the 10th colour on the top row. Maybe 2% size. We're going to keep it quite low. So let's put it maybe about 15% strength opacity. And we're going to build in some lines that come along. It might be a bit small. Let's put it up 3%. And we can go right up to the edge with this. Most of the light's coming from here, and it's going to impact this right side of the tree, naturally enough. And it doesn't need a huge amount of labouring on. Just run some streaks that run up and down And if there's gaps and splits that start to appear in your brush marks, so they could be features on the tree without overly kind of describing them. They can be put in there quite simply, and then an extra emphasis on the edge. Go over that a few times. And you can see that's really helped pretty much describe that tree with its lighting and its shape and some of the bark textures without really much effort at all. The underside of this branch maybe is impacted by the sun that we've yet to add. And you can see that goes quite a long way just for that one tree. Let's bring it down. Let's turn it down 2% size. And then where we've got some twisty turny shapes that are roots, again, don't forget that edge, maybe some twists and turns, but then it's going to quickly turn into rocks. So then maybe we need to think about top edges of rocks, although we can add leaves and foliage to the top edge of rocks too, but we can have some flatter edges. Why not? So that's a sufficient starting point. We'll go in, let's try the 9th colour on the bottom row. Let's go in with 3% size, 20% strength or so. And the top edge of this rock, we've got the alpha lock on, maybe a little bit smaller, 2%. And the sun can be hitting that stone and get some of that highlight in there. And that feels appropriate for it to be a really warm tone there. You get more saturated and warmer tones as you get closer to us in an image. That is entirely naturalistic. Let's turn it down, lower on that 2% size, just a little bit there maybe. And your shapes will be different, so you just have to be a little bit responsive to whatever shapes you happen to have created. And imagine how the light is going to perhaps just impact it. I'm going to go to the layer, tap on it and turn off the alpha lock, and we'll go in some green colours. We've got the 9th colour on the middle row, and we will go back in with the organic rainforest brush. 2% size, maybe 80% strength. And let's just think about our edges, our shapes. Let's just add some nice greens in here. And it's just a really useful way of blending in. If you're not that confident with drawing rocks, well, it's a bit of a cheat and it's fine. Have a little bit of a fuzzy kind of green texture that overruns them, and you know, the 1 or 2 perhaps rock shapes that you feel are working, I'll leave them. I'm going to go backwards to the 6th colour. Let's get a variety of greens in here, maybe in the shadows, could be a slightly cooler green. And then, well, just like we did before, we need some more vibrant greens. This time we've got the 10th colour, and we can really go for it here. And this is going to stand out as being significantly more vibrant and more green, or more yellow green, much more of a warm green than anything else in the scene, which absolutely makes sense. Let's turn that down, 1% size. Can you really use this now to be putting it exactly where we want it? We can have these textures up and down the tree, why not? Little bits as the sun is just creeping around that edge. Zoom in, little sections in and around here. And it is more about the effect than it is like, I'm not drawing individual leaves here or plants. I'm going for a look. Efficient steps, I think, is the way of describing this kind of technique. And then, well, we can go back in with some of these cooler colours. Let's go for the 8th colour on the bottom row. Back in with the airbrushing, well, a medium hard brush, why not? 2% size, it says 19, but somewhere around there, 20% opacity rather. And then we can just, anywhere where there's gaps in between that foliage, you can just accentuate any little tree roots that might just be twisting through there. Fill them in a little bit more, add some more of that cooler blue colour in places. It's quite nice. Bring it up, have it merge with the tree. We've got a real kind of morphing of one element into another. We do have a change of hue. Maybe that's just because it's more in the sun. Maybe that's the explanation. Backwards, 7th colour. On that basis, we can just perhaps in the shadow show more of that blue colour. Maybe go back in with the 10th colour, low on that 2%, and maybe just there's little bits stick out. In fact, let's try the warmer colour, the 9th colour. Little bits stick out. Maybe they deserve a little bit of that warmth. A little bit there, perhaps. If it's impacting the green, it should impact something really close to it as well. You've got to respond and think logically. If it's impacting one element, it's going to impact the next thing. Without a huge amount of time spent on it, you can actually create quite a nice pleasing effect. I'm going to go back in with the 7th colour, still the same brush, so still on the medium hard brush, 2% size, 20% strength. Just add a bit more in here. Could be a bit confusing as to what's what, and that's okay. It's fine, especially with organic things. Down here in the shadows, with this colour, you can just add a bit of noise. Just a sense that maybe you've got a bit of a boulder here, a bit of a stone, to add some of this cool blue colour in there. Doesn't need to be overly defined or spelt out. And if it's gone, it looks a bit brush mark heavy, you can always go in with the smudge, put the smudge to the airbrushing, soft brush maybe, 2% size, say 40% strength, and you can just soften them in, mush them together, smudge them around, and then anything where you're happy with the colours, but somehow they've just made too bold a feature, you can soften them together like that. Back in with the brush. On the shadow side of this stone, we can add some of this blue. That definitely works. Matches what we've got here, I suppose. Back in with the 10th colour. 1% size, maybe a bit more strong, 50% strength. And, well, we have little sections here that deserve a bit of a brighter edge, maybe. Let's not be frightened of those really bright tones. Just excuse me, I have a bit of a cold at the moment, so if I sound a bit bunged up, then yeah, struggling with a bit of a cold, but we're getting there anyway. Okay, that looks quite nice. And then we've got this side, so let's go for that side. Let's go for layer 13. Tap on it, put on the alpha lock. And, well, we can do the same kind of thing, can't we? So where were we? Let's go in with the medium hard brush, and let's go in with, we use the 10th colour on the top row, 3% size. Let's go for about 30% strength, I think we were. We can just run some streaks, some lines that twist and turn through that tree. It doesn't have to be a neat thing. It really doesn't. It's a very organic element, so, if it's a bit scruffy looking, that's actually not a problem. As long as you go back in and then just really emphasize the bright edge that faces the middle of our composition, where the sun is, so just give it a bit more emphasis there. It's amazing how loose you can be with something like this without really worrying about it. And it kind of pulls together just fine. Then we've got some rocks. Let's start with all the cool colour first. We'll start with this 10th colour. Build in some of they're in the shadow part, but we've got some slightly highlighted colours compared to the black base colour. So let's just get some of those in. Let's turn it down a little bit. Let's go to 2% size. Again, just some splits in the rock. Could be quite nice. And if you need to go in there and more positively add those splits, then that's fine too. A few sections in here. So like I was saying, if you need to go in with the 6th colour on the bottom row, medium hard brush, maybe 1% size, 60% strength or something, you can just go in and work some splits, some little fissures that come in there, and just start to break those stones up a little bit. Easy enough to add them in. Could be really effective. Likewise, we're on a different layer. We can go back to layer 12 and we could do something similar in here. We did mention it, so we can do it now. Easy enough. Back to layer 13. Back in, well, let's try a lighter colour. Let's go for these colours. Let's go for the 7th colour on the bottom row. Medium hard brush. Higher on that 2% size, maybe about 30% strength. Zoom into this area. And it's quite easy, it's quite subtle. Start with some shapes, create some separation. Create a little boulder there, some shadow. And honestly, it needn't be too laboured on. A lot of the magic really happens when we start adding the highlights anyway. And then anything we're not happy with, we just cover over with foliage too. So don't stress and be too anxious about it. Once you've got some suggestions of shapes, just like I was showing you, we're going with the 9th colour. On the bottom row, medium hard brush, low on that 2% size, maybe 60% strength. Let's zoom in, and just on these edges, sun's coming in, so it needs to impact. Let's turn it down a little bit, 1%. And then we're probably going to have a load of foliage there. I think I'm going to add greenery, so I'm not going to add too much of this warm highlight, just a few bits here and there. You can see, you can feel the impact. When something is working, you feel the impact of the sun coming through. And sometimes it's hard to exactly describe what you're doing, but you know when it works, because it allows you just to instantly feel that it's part of that light. There's definitely logic involved in artwork, but sometimes it's just you put something in and it gels and it feels cohesive. You couldn't describe how it's done, but it just does work. So just some top edges here, and likewise you might be doing sections and it just doesn't feel right, but that's okay. It's digital. Take a deep breath, undo what you've done, try again. There's no need to panic with digital. It's a very forgiving format, medium. So if you do make mistakes and it isn't working, you've got plenty of opportunity to retry it until you are happier with it. Now, we're not taking this to the nth degree. We're keeping this quite loose, quite rough, quite sketchy, really. We could definitely spend longer on things like these rock textures, but we're just getting a hint of them in there. And then tint colour. And they don't necessarily stand up to the massive amount of scrutiny if we zoom in too much, but I'm getting you to the effect, the colours, the composition, the overall look. And if you want to spend longer on these details, refine them even further, experiment with different brushes, then I absolutely encourage that. I'm just going to go to the layer, turn off the alpha lock. Like I say, I do encourage you to experiment further beyond what I'm showing you here. This gets you 80%, 90% towards a finished picture, and then you can fine tune that last section of it and end up with something even better than what I'm showing you. Then I absolutely encourage and celebrate that. Okay, zoom out. Does it feel like the sun's hitting there? I'm quite happy that it does. So let's go to the layer. We've turned off the alpha lock. We can go in with these green colors. So we'll go to the 9th color on the middle row. We'll go back in with the organic rainforest brush. Top end of 2% size, 80% opacity. And well, I'm just going to add some of this green in here. And this is really going to encroach up our tree. I like this foliage texture. I really want this to be all about this texture, really. It's everywhere. It's on the mountains in the background. It's in the foreground. It's just everywhere. We'll do some of it down here. I'll have it creeping up the tree itself. Why not? We're yet to do the foliage of the trees too, and it is going to be more of this, pretty much. Let's go to the 10th colour, turn it down 2%, and then just like we've got the sun impacting the stones, it's really going to zing at the edge of this foliage too, at the edge of this organic green area. The overall effect really kind of relies upon us having these super vibrant colours in the foreground. If we didn't, it just wouldn't work in the same way. The effect is all about the contrast. We know the green's here, green's there, completely different colour. Let's run it up the tree. Excuse me, my voice is going a little bit. What we could do, I suppose, is we could create a separate layer. Let's go behind the trees. So layer 10, create a new layer, layer 14. We'll go in with the 9th colour on where were we? The middle row. Still with the rainforest brush, maybe top end of 3% size, 80% strength. And I'm just going to go in there behind the tree branches. I'm going to start creating some bigger sections of tree foliage, start shutting down the corners. It's quite big what we've got it on actually. Let's put it down lower on that 3%. Fill in some of these upper areas with foliage. I want it to look very dense. We've got a very dense scene generally in the background. There's just a super amount of trees. So we're representing that now. We're having quite a lot of trees in the foreground, quite a lot of foliage rather on the trees in the foreground. Kind of vines hanging down, big sections of foliage that just stick out all over the place. And if we need to add a couple of fine branches in to justify them as well, then we can do. Over here, along the edge. Tap on it, put on the alpha lock, and let's go for a brighter colour. Well, we've got that 10th colour, so let's use it. Maybe with a lower opacity, maybe 30% opacity and a 3% size, and we can just, especially in the centre area, feel the impact of the sun, even though, again, we've not really added it yet, but we are starting to feel a kind of golden glow just by adding this more into this area. Slightly soften that. Therefore, we've got some of that darker green just at the edges where it's a bit further away from the sun that, again, we've not added yet. I think that helps, and then we can go to our top layer and create a layer above everything. So layer 15 is above the tree branches that we've already created. Back in with the 9th colour and a stronger opacity, maybe 60%, 3% size, and we're cutting in front, big sections. In fact, let's go for a bigger percentage, let's go for 80. Cutting in front of our tree trunk in areas, obscuring it, making it feel completely overgrown in places. It's quite a pleasing effect, especially at the top. It's really laid up. Then we've got the 10th colour again. And then, well, we could introduce some of those light greens. But got it now at a stronger opacity, 80%. Just cut around the edges. Why not? Let's just go for it. Be quite bold. And you can see that you can feel the effect coming together. We've not done the water yet, which I suppose is the last kind of major element. But you can feel that the trees have kind of started to really pull together. Might go back to the 9th colour. 2% size, 100% opacity. And I'm going to do a couple of vines that are just hanging down. So completely horizontal vine shapes, pretty much, from the tree. Just to give it that kind of real jungle-like feel. Just a few. Tapping it, put on the alpha lock. Go in with the 10th colour, and then I'm going to turn it down really low on that 1%. And I can go in and I can just, maybe just at the edges, really try and capture the edge. So almost preserving the little dark center of that shape if you can. You can kind of see that effect. So go for the edges. Try to preserve the dark color in the middle of that shape. Just a little bit. The bottom is okay if it really just captures the light, that's fine. Turn off the alpha lock again. Maybe at the bottom it's just too illuminated to do that. If it stand out, that works. Let's think about the water. So where were we? We were on layer 11. So for this layer, I'm actually going to brighten it up to begin with. We had a slightly darker colour, but I'm going to pretty much cover it up with a lighter colour. So I'm going to go for first colour on the bottom row. I'm going to drag into that layer and release and flood fill it. I think it's easier to start with a lighter colour. Then we can go to the third colour on the bottom row. I'm going to go in with a soft brush this time with an airbrushing, 3% size, maybe 70% strength. And sometimes I flip layers just to create the kind of reflection of them, but it doesn't feel as appropriate on this image. I think I'd rather just with a soft brush go in there and kind of draw it in. This shape has a kind of reflection. So just like you've got the angle here, you'll represent it here a little bit, but it's going to be more kind of blended in really. It's not going to be quite as neat as that. And this one comes here, so you can imagine it in here a little bit. Represent that reflection and shadow. And then along here, we've got a bump. Let's turn it down 3%. Let's make a reflection of that. And then I suppose this whole section is going to be in a kind of reflection of sorts, so we can just consume it all in this area. And then we've got here, and we'll probably need to be a bit more sharp with this, a bit more exaggerated. We'll put it in here initially, just like that. And that already, without a huge amount of effort, has started to make it feel more cohesive. But we're going to push it further. We're going to go, let's go for the second colour on the top row. 2% size, 70% strength, and we just want some of the light from the sky to be impacting the water, and we can have it in little sections that break up the water like this, that go more horizontal. Let's turn it down 1% size. And I prefer to rotate the canvas. I just find it a little bit easier. You do it in taps and streaks that run across though. It doesn't have to be just one big shape, it can be a few. Let's go in there, a bit more over there, just in the very center. I'm going to go for a different color. Let's go for the fourth color on the bottom row. Still the soft brush with an airbrushing, 4% size, maybe 40% strength. A slightly different kind of green here, a bit warmer. Tap it in, blend it in a little bit. And down here, get some little anomalies creeping in. Let's turn this down 2%, maybe just slightly under the water. We're getting some little things that are under there. And on that basis, in the shadow part, we'll go for the fifth color was under the water there. So 3% size, still the soft brush, with an airbrushing 15% opacity. And we've got a combination. It could be the foliage that's creating dappled kind of shadow, but it could also be things under the surface. I'm getting a kind of combination of those two things. But either way, we're just creating a little bit of a dappled, especially in this kind of shadow area here, dappled kind of look. You can appreciate that. Let's turn that up. 3% size, maybe go a bit higher, 30% strength. Add some of this in. Stronger shadow related to this stone makes sense. Turn it down again a little bit, 2%. Again underneath that stone, stronger shadow makes sense. Likewise over here, we need a stronger shadow, don't we? Stronger reflection. Turn it down, lower on that 2%. Add some of them in here. And that whole area is starting to pull together better. Let's look at our colours. Maybe that darkest colour, the 6th colour, let's go for it. 2% size, we're still only low on the percentage. Let's put it even lower, 20%. I feel like we need to just darken it up underneath the stones. And then maybe I'll go in and reflect some of those blue colours too. But just darken it up to begin with. Really make it feel like it's connected. Especially where the stone hits the water. And then I can go back in, 7th colour, light colour here, so let's reflect it in the water a little bit. Light colour here, reflect it in the water. Just, it's subtle, but I think it makes sense to add it. Same here, maybe you can go for the lighter colour, the 8th colour. Reflect that lighter colour in the water. I'm going to create a new layer, layer 16, that's above the initial water layer. I'm going to go in with the 2nd colour on the bottom row, airbrushing medium hard brush, 2% size, 40% strength, and well, I'm just going to start introducing some ripples that are really close to us, just some extra lines. It's going to contrast slightly with the colours we've already got, bring in a suggestion of more disruption in the water, bring it across. It can nibble in at the edges over here, back here as well. Let's just zoom in. Maybe we need to turn it down 1%. There can just be some breaks. Add it to the white. And perhaps we need to add more of a white colour. Go in with the 2nd colour on the top row. Let's put the percentage strength up to 70, so the opacity up to 70. And we can just bring in some strong highlights from the sun. Do it as kind of like a broken few shapes. Let's back up to 2%. Off the bottom of the canvas even. Bring some points over here. I'm going to go to the darker colour again. I'm going to go, maybe not to the darkest, maybe to the 3rd colour on the bottom row. And well, we're going to have some of these darker colours coming in as well. From the edges. Bring it in. I'm going to add it to some of these areas back here. Add it to the edge of some of this darker shadow or reflection. Bring it in, nibble on that edge. Bring in some more slight ripples and turbulence into the water. Doesn't need a huge amount. Now, we've done the really closer ones. We've got a big section here that I feel should be subtly represented in the water here as well from there, a reflection. So we're on this top layer. We'll go in with a 3rd colour. On the bottom row, we'll go in with the medium hard brush, 3% size, 20% strength, and you can imagine this one is just impacting a little bit. So we'll bring some of that dark colour in from this. We need to be careful, it's just going to overwhelm otherwise. We can bring it in here, create a bit more of a shadow. It's creating this sense of movement down here. It feels a bit more related then. Let's go to the smudge, put the smudge on the medium hard brush, 100% opacity in a small size, maybe of 2%. And then we can just move in and around here, push it left and right, create some more of those kind of ripple shapes. Push it in at the edge, push it back out. And that kind of helps a little bit with those kind of movements as well. And then I suppose we need to think about some of the highlights as well. It's okay to do that. So we can go to the 10th color. We've got a bright color here. We can have it represented in the water, maybe a smaller size. 1% size, 30% strength. Bright colors there. Can have it represented in the water. Doesn't have to be huge impact, but some makes sense. Got a strong color up there, represented in the water. We've also got green colors that should perhaps be represented in the water. Let's go for the 9th color. 2% size, maybe 15% strength. You've got greens up here, so maybe we can have suggestions of the green reflected in the water. Just a hint, not too much. Greens up here, so maybe green's just reflected here. Just all adds to the mix. Green here, maybe a hint of green in there. And that's maybe a bit strong, but you get the idea. Maybe turn it down 5% or so, just ever so subtly in here. I'm going to go up to the top layer, create a new layer, and it's just for fine tuning now at this point. I'm going to go in with the, well, maybe the 7th color on the bottom row. We're still, what are we with? The medium hard brush, 2% size, 20% strength. Just blend in this to the water there a little bit, soften it in. Bring some of that stone color into the water. And here, just a little bit. And in here, maybe go to the 6th color. Down here, I feel like I need it even darker. 3% size, even darker down here. Why not? I feel like it makes sense a bit more. I feel like there should be more of a separation in here, so let's go for 1% size, 30% strength. Just a nice neat line between the stones and the water. Might be a bit dark, that black, but it's fine. Bit dark there, so let's just soften it. 7th color, subdue it slightly. But we've got that neat line, and that's what counts. 6th color, make it slightly crisper in places. Back in with the 7th color, and you can just soften it in. It's gone a bit far. I'll just use the 7th color, in fact. That works. Maybe the 8th color. Soften it a bit more. Yeah, happy with that. Back to layer 15. Back in with the 9th color on the middle row. Organic rainforest brush. 3% size, 100% opacity. And I just want to fill in a bit more of the foliage up here. There's a reason to it. I'm going to use it now as a way of really contrasting the sun. But we need to build up the foliage a little bit in order to have that impact. So we'll build up some of this to begin with. Then go to our layers. Top layer, create a new layer, layer 19. Tap on the N and scroll down to the Add Blend Mode. First color on the top row, airbrushing, soft brush, 20% size, only 10% strength, opacity, and just tap it into this area a few times until we get that nice kind of golden look. And then we'll go for the 2nd color, change to the medium hard brush, set the size of the sun, maybe 8% and 100% opacity, and let's just put the sun in there. We can go to the whole of that layer, adjustments, bloom, slide it across, not to 100, maybe to about, in my case, about 60%, and deselect. And it just brings that sun, it impacts the whole scene. And then stay on the same layer. I'm going to go in with the 2nd color on the top row with the soft brush still, 5% size, 10% strength, and just in this lower section, just go over this a little bit. Bring some of that brightness down here as well. Not too much. Don't want to overdo it, but it just balances out the overall image, and I think that completes the painting. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this point. I hope you've enjoyed following along. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I shall see you back here soon. Bye for now.